Right, so this was the photo I'm using, and a quick recap on the grid was the first thing that I did was just got a piece of paper the same shape and size as the image. So I literally just got a sheet of A4 and just lined it up there and marked it off so it's the same width, marked it up so it's the same height. Then to make the grid, I then just folded that into quarters. So I fold it in half, fold it in half again, and then same sort of thing this way. Yep, then just marked the fold lines, transferred those over, there and there, top and bottom, and then that's an instant grid. If you want to do any of these a little bit smaller, so like this detailed area, I've made into eighths rather than quarters. So just folding that bit over again and transfer that over. So that just helped me there. Or you can just do it, just guess it. I don't know if you can see that, but I've just made a few marks here and there. And that just helps to sort of subdivide those rectangles up. To get the grid onto the board, first I need to make sure that this is the same shape as this. And you can see my board is a bit wider than this shape. This is a slightly squarer rectangle than this one. All I did was I lined up two sides here, got a longish straight edge, I've got these bits of Venetian line, and just needs to go from corner to corner, and then really anything on that rectangle, any rectangles you want to draw there, the ratio of this side to this side will be the same as this side to this side. So it's that easy. It's really easy, okay? Just brilliant. So I did all that on the video last week. Unfortunately, the Tuesday afternoon video didn't work for some reason. The morning one was very rushed, so the best one is the Thursday one, because the morning one was a bit late. But the Thursday one, if you wanted to watch it again or recap, that's the one to have a look at. It's on YouTube, send you the link, but they're all on YouTube anyway, on my channel. So that's the gridding bit, and I've gridded my images that way really for about 30 years, because I just worked that out to be the easiest way to do it, rather than getting tape measures on calculators and calculating what the shape and size everything has to be. Just divide it again, I think is the simplest solution. Even if you didn't want to make that many squares, sometimes just dividing your board in half and your picture in half, just doing it by eye, sometimes that can help, because you instantly see, well, both their heads are in that quarter. So I know that if my board's in half and quartered, that's where the heads need to be. So sometimes even just something like as simple as that can help. All good so far? Yep, right, okay. So with painting side then, so I'm just using the water mixable oils, water soluble oils. If anybody wants to try those, got those here. Mine are a little bit old, so sometimes they're a little bit stiff in the tube, but they're still quite usable. I particularly like the water mixables indoors, or if I'm doing quick demos, because it's much quicker to wash up. So I quite like that about them. So the background colour, to me this is a sort of slightly a pinky grey. So I've started this morning, but I'll do a little bit on this side. So I've got a very simple, just a limited palette really. I've got a couple of blues, ultramarine and cerulean, a couple of reds, like crimson and the cadmium, and then a little bit of cadmium yellow light, some titanium white and a bit of brown, burnt umber brown. So just a few colours. I think that will probably suffice for this subject. Hi Charles. Right, so just start to get this greyish colour, just starting with a bit of titanium white and a tiny bit of brown and just a tiny bit of crimson. I think that would do, perhaps a little bit more brown. So I can just cut in here. Now I decided I'm going to miss this bin off because that's not really helping. Also, I didn't particularly like her arm there, so I just prefer just to have a profile. So I'm going to leave that at that. I'm going to keep this quite bright because I need a little bit of contrast with her skin tones. So that can go quite light in there. Actually, with oils, quite often this is a very traditional way of building up oils, just getting blocks of colour in different areas that you could then go back into and work in some detail. So if there's like textures or things like that, I could work those in at a different point. Cut in there. So the other thing with the gridding, a couple of things to mention is I've used pastel. So this is, you know, I'm almost like wiping it off as I'm painting. But if you've used graphite, you probably need to remove that beforehand because that will just show through the paint, unless you don't mind it showing through the paint. Some artists like to leave all their workings out, but I tend to like to lose that really. So I would just sort of kind of try and get rid of the grid as I go, just sort of wash that out. The other thing with grids is I quite often draw as I go along. So I might find that I'll lose the grid and I want to bring it back. So one thing that can be useful is just marking on the edge of your board or the edge of your canvas any where the lines are going to be. And that way I can just re-establish it when it comes down to sort of redrawing. And more often than not, I make my grids out of paint anyway. I just paint them in rather than using pastel or something. So that is, I think, a handy trick. It's something I've worked out when I've been doing commissions. It's quite a good way of being able to just re-establish the drawing. So that can be background, work back anywhere I need some background. I've already worked this little shrub in here. And I quite like the idea of that being slightly out of focus really back there. That's a little bit of, just a little bit of darker tone at the bottom of the shrub. But I don't particularly want it in sharp focus because for me the figures are the main subject. So that would be okay. Maybe lighten some areas into the green a little bit, lighter greens as well as darker greens. When it comes to painting the flesh tones, I use a mixture of yellows and red, sometimes some brown and sometimes some blue. I'm thinking particularly like this shadow under her chin. If I was going to start with that, I quite often start with just the colour. So yellow and red start with, which gets me quite a bright orange. That would be a bit too strong really on its own. So I can either add a tiny bit of blue, which turns that into a sort of browny colour. I think I'll add a little bit more red and maybe a little bit more blue. So that's the ultramarine blue. So that might work quite well for shadow under a chin. I'll just add a tiniest bit of white. So I basically add the white at the end. So I start off with colour and then just lighten it if I need to. I think it's quite easy for the colours to look a little bit chalky. If you start with white and then just keep adding colour, it can end up a little bit chalky. So that, I've got a bit of plastic on here, so I can just try that out and just see how close that is. That looks a little bit dark, but I'll try that for the time being. So sort of darker shadows just under her chin there, and perhaps in her eye socket as well. That can go in there. So basically anywhere there's a little bit of shadow, there's a little bit of shadow just under her nose there too. So pop that in, like that, and sort of in there. Yeah, I'm not going to paint her hand there, so it's really just the lighter tones now. So I can make another mix that's slightly lighter. So again, reds and yellows, tiny bit of white. And that gets me a nice, sort of fairly light pinky tone. So I can then paint that anywhere I need that. A little bit of shadow, go back to the shadow mix and just mix some of that in. The shadows sort of on our cheekbones there, so bring those in a little bit. And then just blend that in there. And back to the other original mix. I think there's probably a tiny bit of shadow just under her lips. I'm just going to put that in there. So, I mean, her features need a bit more work on, but I think for the time being, that'll be enough. A little bit of work on her neck. So I've got to go back to the shadow tone, just darken that a little bit. Then that'll be all right for the minute. Because my intention is to get some paint everywhere, and then I can then come back in and, you know, refine details and add more to it. I'm thinking perhaps her hair almost kind of overlaps her jacket, so it might be better to get a jacket in first. There's something he's got on there. I can't work out what it is. It might be headphones, but I think I'm probably going to ignore that because that's a little bit. I can't, you know, it's a bit distracting. So I want to get a dark tone for her jacket. I don't have any black or grey out, so I'm just going to do a mixture of brown and blue, and that should get, you know, that's quite a nice dark tone. That's almost like as dark as I need to go anyway. When I was taught to paint, I was really taught not to use black, so you can do an awful lot without black. So I'm going in a little bit dark to start with, and her hair is going to be there, and the collar of her jacket, probably need a bit more background in there actually. I think the colour needed to go to there. But basically just kind of work some of that into the areas where I'm going to need it. And then I can come back on the next layer and then add, you know, folds and details on the top there. So that'll come down to about here. I'll just do a little bit of a hair and then I'll leave it at that. And so just get another brush, just to save washing them. But what I do with washing brushes is basically I give it a wash and then I'll just dry it out with some tissue or some rags. I don't like the paints getting too wet, too sort of watery. I tend to prefer to just spread the paint quite thinly by just scrubbing it around. So her hair colours, she's got, it's like a slightly gingery colour, sort of an orangey brown. So I'll use a little bit of yellow and cadmium yellow and cadmium red, with just a touch of the burnt umbrine as well in places. Maybe a tiny bit of crimson in places. So the shadowy bits are going to be in here. And that just sort of cuts in around his features. And then with oils, really using as big a brush as I can comfortably sort of handle. And then, as I need to, I'll come into the smaller brushes. Quite dark on the top there, so I'll just go slightly darker there. I think that will probably be enough for now, and I can always maybe add a little bit more I'd rather get the shadows in first and then the highlights. So there's a little bit more shadow can go in here. That's in there. Perhaps a tiny bit more in there. And just using the texture of the brush almost sort of suggests the texture of the hair. Just these bristle brushes are quite a rough brush. Yeah, so I'll basically do that. I'll carry on blocking him in, and then once I've got some paint everywhere, perhaps next week I'll just refine a few details and add a few finishing touches. Things like the pattern of his shirt, I've kind of left that for the minute, but that could go in maybe next time. Any questions? Yeah, all good to go? Right, leave it at that then.